series that I wanted to start, just Topwater Fishing Series. And just a blanket statement right now, before we get into anything, everything that I'm saying only applies to early morning topwater treble hook bait fishing, okay? I'm not talking about glides, crankdowns, or anything else like that. I am purely talking about topwater baits with treble hooks, okay? So now that that's out of the way, we can get into some specific. That maybe purchasing the next bait or changing out something on your fishing rod. Maybe I need to get a new rod. There's other things that you can do and that I think are way more productive for catching fish and more fish, but it does take a little bit longer setup. So little things like you need to start waking up early. And what I want you to do is go check out your local laws, right? And you can see that a day is defined 1 hour before sunrise and 1 hour after sunset. And that's going to change on the daily, right? Like we can go here right now and just look whenever the twilight and dawn, and like they're all going to keep changing. So you need to change every single day when you're doing it too. I do have Instagram loaded up here because maybe there's a couple videos or clips that I wanted to walk through. But yes, so getting up early is definitely one of the best things that you can possibly do. As soon as there's foot traffic and as soon as you see people start walking around, the bites that we're going for are gone. And I'm not trying to say that foot traffic is going to kill all of the bites, but for this very specific style of fishing, we're not going to be doing a lot of outwards fishing unless we know we have like precog that we've already hunted that place out and we know that there is a weed this far below the surface and they come all the way up to the surface. Then we're going to go kind of parse that area out. Or giant blankets of just grass on top of the water where the ducks and geese go in to feed in the middle of it. And you'll see this a lot. They'll create a path, and fishing those paths have been very productive for me at night. You do run the risk of getting stuck, but luckily the rats that I fish and I like fishing, the mischiefs, they all have really large lips and they come through grass better than most treble hooks. Obviously, there's always a risk when you're running treble hooks that you can get caught up and you can't shake them off. That happens all the time. And being able to shake them off is, it's another thing, because if you're using monofilament, you can't exactly shake off a weed that's 150 feet out. If you're using straight braid, shame on you. If you're using braid to leader, then you could directly connect and pop that stuff off at a much higher rate than monofilament. Monofilament doesn't work very well for shaking weeds off. However, it is the second best topwater application. I totally recommend fishing monofilament. If you are fishing a braid to leader setup, I highly recommend going with an FG knot with a Rizzuto finish. And if you don't know how to tie that knot, since it is, Albertos are right up there too, but it's not 100%. But the FG will remain 100% knot if tied correctly. So I highly recommend tying that knot. And if you don't know how to tie it, you always run the risk. There's risk factors to each one of them, right? So monofilament dulls your sensitivity. You can't feel 150, 200 feet out if there's any weeds on your line. And that's very necessary when you're night fishing. If you're fishing in a weeded area, which you should be, then you need to know if there's weeds on your line. If there isn't weeds on your line, then you should be able to feel that too. And we'll talk about that in a second. And we'll talk about that right now, because one of the other things besides waking up early and getting there first is just packing one rod and putting everything you can into this one single setup, okay? And there's very good reasons that they were up on the screen a little bit ago, but Princeton University used to have this research facility called Paranormal Labs. They shut down in 2007, but before they shut down, and you can run and look at all the experiments, their studies, their work is online, and you can go out and check it. But they basically proved that human consciousness affects the world. not just the world, it affects electronics also. We can our influence, if trained properly, can directly influence number generators and other like lights that you can turn up the brightness and down the brightness. Very crazy things, but that's all proven. And that's going to bring me into this section, because putting all that you can into one thing is going to change your mindset. It's you're going to have better luck. Whatever luck is, right? We're applying luck as just a blanket term, placebo, just whatever you're feeling is going to happen. So you need to prepare. You need to have your backpack, right? You want your backpack, you want your scale, you want something to take the weight, take the measurements of it. You want pliers to get the hooks out. You want to be prepared. And being prepared is a lot more now that we know that our consciousness influences the world around us. That is confidence, okay? This is why confidence baits exist. It's not because you're confident that it's going to catch any more fish for you. It's that it literally changes the fabric of the universe. You are going to catch more fish on that, which is why I don't think colors really matter that too much for topwater either. We can get into it about underneath, but that's not really what we're here talking about. Like I said, topwater treble hook baits only. Yeah, color, not really a big thing for me. I haven't really found one that worked the best, and I've fished all these crazy colors, and I've fished them a lot over the past 6 years or 5.5 years or so. Consciousness has got to be the single greatest factor in fishing. So do everything you possibly can. Spend a little bit of extra money on the good rod, right? That's going to help. Spend a little bit of extra money on getting a decent reel. You know it's not going to be breaking. Get a line that you trust. I like Suffix 832. That's my go-to braid. I'm not saying it's the best. Get the braid that you've liked, and whatever you want to do. And then I just use simple monofilament. I use big game. I use 20 for my 1.5 ounces and 25 to 30 for my 3.5 to 9 area. And I have broken off, unfortunately, on 20. There is some nasty weed beds when you're fishing from the bank. If you're fishing from the kayak, you may not have to even tie and go through all of this effort at all. Just, you're not making sweeping casts. You're not going to be fishing 200 feet down a parallel from the bank and getting your, it's just not going to happen. So I'm not talking about kayak fishing either. I don't have a kayak. I've never owned a kayak. I flipped a kayak when I took it out. It's not fun. I wasn't wearing a life vest. It was absolutely scary. I don't recommend doing that. Anyways, let's get on to the next thing real quick. Let me scroll on here. I wanted to just present to you a video here real quick before I make my statement, and I'm going to show you why it matters, okay? So let's check out this video. Patience works. And you're going to see that it hit the bait, and I just kept reeling. The instinct for me to set the hook, right? It's not there. Do not set the hook on topwater treble hook baits. I actually think this is a sweeping statement for most treble, if not all treble hook baits, but I do not think that there's any benefit whatsoever of setting the treble hook. And when you fish, now I learned from a friend, Kyler, that we were out steelhead fishing. He told me that if my bait is at 12 o'clock, right? My bait's at 12 o'clock. I need to hold the rod at 10 to 10:30. Just offset it, right? You don't want your line going directly to your bait. You want to be able to just reel and have your rod load for you. That is the entire goal right here. And your rod loading emits an enormous amount of pressure when it's defined down to the tip of a hook. Okay, we've all been taking baits out of fish mouths, and they just go in us. You can't stop it or it goes back in the fish. These things don't need a massive hook set. You don't need a sweeping hook set for this stuff. It's kind of like when, like Gary Yamamoto said, when you're fishing one of his worms, you don't set the hook either. You just reel up into them or just lightly pull up on them to set the hook. And the more force that it does that, the higher chance it has of ripping open its mouth. Okay? And it's going to happen when you lose fish. And I've lost a lot of fish. And you know when it happens? It happens when they jump, because that's when the forces are the highest on them, right? The water isn't there to stop them from thrashing back and forth so much, and their mouth tears, and that thing just comes right out. Those shakes are extremely effective in shaking off our baits. And then the second highest place, it's right when you're pulling it out of the water. Again, when the force is the most extreme, those treble holes are going to open up. And as soon as you open it up, just think, even doubling the barb, you're done. That thing can slip right out. I prefer to use a extremely light drag. I don't want the fish because I'm fishing far away, and even sometimes when I catch them close, I don't bring them in right away. I let them tire out a little bit. That's going to actually increase your chances on treble hooks. Just let them fight, let them run, let them do what they're going to do. Set your drag low. If I caught an 813 or an 816 on size 4 trebles and didn't bend one out at all, it's because I used a very light drag and no hook set. That fish had so much time to fight out there that when I actually put it on the bank, it didn't even move. Like that is the goal. And when you're big fish hunting from the shore, I'm telling you, if you're not using an EWG, don't set and don't crank them in as fast as possible. And another thing, like this video right here, I guess my camera's turned around, like this video, is that when you set the hook prematurely and you do not know if a fish is on it, you have removed it from the zone that it's actually going to be eating. Okay? And then what are you going to do? Cast back out? I'm telling you right now, just keep reeling. Do not react to those at all. Do not react. And you might feel that the fish grabs the tail or something like that, and you go to set. Resist. Just reel slowly. You will know 100% when that fish is on. Now, with braid to leader, obviously, you do not need to set at all. But I did have a discussion with somebody, I'm not going to name his name, but he pointed out something extremely valuable to me. And is that if I'm fishing like monofilament and I'm 100 plus feet out, you might have to give them a little bit, okay? Because that line is weird, and that is a very specific situation. And again, you shouldn't be fishing straight braid at all. And I guess we can go over some of, both have their positives and benefits, right? If you're fishing straight braid, you don't have to tie a knot in the morning to go out, right? You are going to rip a lot more mouths. That direct connection, and you if your drag is set too hard, you can definitely hurt your chances of landing those fish. And I've had my fair share on straight braid. I feel qualified enough after about 2,500 hours of fishing straight braid that you probably shouldn't be fishing straight braid for topwater treble hook applications. Another thing that happens a lot, and it just happens, you're fishing at night, you can't calculate every single cast perfectly, is the front treble hook is just going to get caught in the braid. And when you're fishing night and you're fishing a small area, that matters to me. Even flubbing, 2 out of 100 casts, that's good enough to ruin the chances of me catching a big fish. And not just big fish. I'm out of the mindset that I'm like, oh no, I ruined my cast. And I don't want to break my mindset when I'm out. I want to remain at a nice level consciousness of I am going to catch fish. My casts are going to be good. And I think it does good. It says a lot. And you listen to these older guys, they'll tell you the same thing. Visualize what's going on. And that, again, you're changing by visualizing it. You're changing the landscape in front of you. It works. And the thing is, I can't even explain to you how many times, I can't count how many times that it's actually happened. Just I'm thinking of it and I'm like, how cool would this be? That's how the thought is presented. How cool would this be? And it happens. And I'd say it's happened over 50 times. I can't find every single video, but a lot of these videos, when the bites are really up close to the bank, I just get that feeling, and I'm like, that it's going to happen right there. And it happens right there. So first things first. Now I'm gonna go woo woo again. If you have a dream, right? If you're thinking and you're dying, I know you guys are looking for that casting spot in the carpet at night. You want that casting spot. You've been thinking about the casting spot. You know exactly where the bait is going to go, and you've seen yourself caught a fish there. If I do it, I know you guys are doing it too. Do everything you can to go fish that spot first. Okay? Don't let anything stop you. Get there, make that your first spot. All right. Now here's how I break it down. I park here, and then I would take all the way down to here. Now, I do not walk down to the bank ever. I never walk to the bank when I'm fishing the first cast. And if you don't want to do that, bring a frog rod instead, okay? If you bring a frog rod, then you don't have to risk breaking your build baits. And it's a low value. And I know I said invest in one rod, but to get you used to casting and get your confidence up, you can bring a frog rod and clear the bank before you go up. But make sure you fish like a 10, 11, and 130, two. Clear the bank. Make sure that there's no fish there. Stand at least 50 feet back. Don't walk up. Don't move. You'll run them out. They are very, very finicky. And they're also much closer to the bank than you think they are in almost every single situation. Let's check this out real quick. Oh, we already passed it. So here, look at this. Did you see that fish? It was basically out of the water. That fish was, and a lot of the fish that I catch, they're all set up like this. This is why you have to be the first one there, and you need to approach with caution. You don't want to be stomping. You don't want your light on. You don't want to be talking. You don't want it to, you can't do any of that. Don't even turn your light on unless it's a 5-pounder. Learn how to tie your knots in moonlight and do all that. Okay. So we've already taken our casts, our cast to clear our bank. And then the first thing we're going to do is fish a parallel, and then fish outward grass. Don't exceed more than 4 casts. That's all I got to say. Now, if you're casting 150 feet down the bank, don't move 150 feet down the bank. Walk all the way around and go 300 feet down the bank. That way your next cast, you're just getting new fish. And I'm not out fishing tournaments. My goal, I guess this is a different mindset too. My goal is to catch a fish. And I don't care how much spots I ruin. I'm not sitting there wasting my time with the sundown trying to pick apart an area. You are on a time versus the sun coming up. As soon as that sun comes up, you're all these tactics go away. They last kind of early morning, but as soon as the sun comes up, you don't even need to clear the banks that much anymore. You do in some situations, and I still recommend at least like tossing a swim frat or a frog up on the bank and clearing it. But in most of these situations, those fish are already gone. So don't walk your 150 feet, move more, and then make your next sweeping casts down the bank. And remember not to walk along the shoreline either. Take the route that looks like like an arc or a half circle, and take your time to get there. And this is all I do. And it doesn't matter what body of water that I go to, this works. And it works every single time I go out, unless it's a full moon, like 3 days before the full moon and 3 days after the full moon. Yeah, my luck goes down. They don't really they don't really bite topwater during that period, and they might bite other things, but I've fished enough of them to not want to fish them that much anymore, if that makes sense. Go over some other things that don't require any money to get better at. Maybe some of them require some money, but casting distance. Casting distance will greatly increase how many fish you can access and how pressured those fish are. Now imagine this. Everybody's hitting this lake. They can only cast 150 feet. They make a circle, or wherever the heck they're casting, half circle. They're making a pattern out in the water of fish that have been pressured. And if you can exceed that, you get better access to fish that aren't as pressured. Okay, so learn how to cast further, get a larger reel, do something to get yourself casting. Use one of my rats. These one pieces, well, it's engineered to frickin' fly. All right, then for that very specific reason. Number 2, get yourself some assist cords. Okay, get yourself some assist cords. This single thing is still novelty. Okay, you are removing a sound that nearly every single bait on planet Earth has, a split ring to hardware to hook sound. It makes a jingle. This gets rid of the jingle, and I know it works. When I fish my assist cord baits with my tails on them, then the bass never really get to acclimate. And the best part about it is you can fish your rats with your tails, right? And then I made these. So and they're falling on the ground. So they all sound different. And that means you can actually use the same bait if you like the bait as much as me. This all, the whole bait thing is my fishing, they're made for my fishing style, which is slow and patient. If you are a fast, impatient fisherman, maybe the rat bait isn't for you, okay? So change your style, be different, add some novelty inside of your fishing. Don't be afraid to do that at all, okay? Patience, though, is something that, rats, every single time that you add a level of patience, waiting at a weed line, pausing in front of you for a second before you pick the bait out of the water, letting it sit in the water in some situations, or in some other situations, reeling as soon as it hits like a buzz bait. These are all acceptable things, but I did want to talk about retrieves, because it's very controversial. Everybody has their own way of retrieving, and I think that my take on it's of course different, but when you're reeling in the bait, I do think action means something. I don't think it means everything, though. What I think matters, and it may not be equal or it may be more, is just allowing the fish to make a bad decision. And the more time and the slower retrieve that you're doing gives that fish more opportunity to make a bad decision. And then you can take its bad decision-making skills and amplify those bad decision-making skills, right? You can lure the bass. And what I mean by lure the bass is they're following your bait. I don't know if you know this, but they're not just coming up and eating your bait. That rarely happens. And in most cases, when you get bit, when it's on the water, that bass was already following it as it was flying to that area. And I've seen this in a shallow area so much that bass, they're already hitting the water. They're already at the top of the water waiting for your bait to hit the ground or hit the water. And as soon as it does, they grab it. And they're not just, you didn't cast on their head. They're so fast. They have incredible decision-making skills. And to think that you can make a bass react, whatever we call reacting, they are just so fast at calculating this that we call it reaction, because when you're humanizing reaction with human, right? It's something that you've trained to not think. And it's not a mindless activity, but it's something that is almost a reaction. You've trained boxing and you set up this punch 1,000 times, and then when you see it, your body just does something, and your brain has just been trained to think in a different way. And what I'm saying is these bass are so fast at thinking that to think that we can make them react with our slow, I don't think it's possible. And again, it may not be everything, but I think that calling it reaction does it a disservice. It's a very quick decision, and I think they're actually processing it rather than like how we humanize it, just an unprocessed. We do it before we think it kind of thing. I think the bass can think this out. So slowing down that retrieve and knowing that they're following or have already locked in on it in the air, giving them that space and then amplifying it by reeling it up to weed lines and pausing at banks, they're like, oh, if I don't get this food now, it's going away and I'm going to be hungry. And so utilizing the obstacles in front of you will actually, I mean, if you have the patience to do it, and a lot of people just want to make the next cast. I don't want to make the next cast. I want to take my time and know that that bass that was behind my bait, it could have been, you know, a giant bass or just a bass that I needed to catch that day. Sometimes I just really want to catch a fish. So I want to be able to set them up, and I want to be able to make them mistake. Now, here's another cool take too, and it's happened to a lot of people. I'd go out on a limb to say that you're standing there casting more than you should, right? More than 4 casts. You maybe made 6 casts, and then on the 7th cast, you're reeling it in, and then all of a sudden your bait goes underwater at your feet, right at your feet. And what I think is happening in those situations is the bass has followed it in the previous cast or maybe the previous 2, and you've been retrieving too fast, and then you cast out again, and there's no bass out there. But when you're reeling in, you're going over their head. They're already sitting there from a previous cast, and this is important. This is very important, which also means that any cast could leave a fish in front of you. And I also, to break some of the rules here of 4 casts, if you know there is a high value area, it may be worth taking a second cast out there. And this one trick has caught me a ton of fish, and it's because they're already sitting right in front of you, and you move them off of that high value spot. You just didn't give them enough time to make that bad decision. So real slow, give them that time to hang them with their own rope, right? Hang them with their own braid. Give them that time. It's going to work. And I promise, if I told you that you would catch a fish every 10 minutes if you reeled slow, would you just keep going around and cranking it out as fast as you can on the hopes of catching a fish? Or would you take the guaranteed fish every 10 minutes? And I think it really is a battle of wits here, because it feels like you're going to catch more fish when you're just covering ground and casting fast. And in all of my experiences, this just has not been true. It hasn't been true since I learned how to fish topwater, I'd say. Just take your time. You don't need to pick apart the area, but every time that you make a cast, you should be trying to optimize how much you're going to get bit. So slow down. Presentation isn't everything. And I know slow is also a presentation, but I'm putting it in a different bracket because it has little to do with the bait and has more to do with the presence of the bait. The longer the bait stays in the water, the more fish you're going to have to, the more fish you're going to catch. And you kind of want to catch them far out. I don't like catching fish close up. You always risk losing them if you don't fight them for a while. And I like fighting my big fish. I like letting them tire themselves out in the treble hooks. So let's see. What else can we talk about here? Is just learning how your bait feels, not with the rod, okay? Not with your rod hand. I know some people turn right. but the amount of force that it takes to torque, again, this is why I highly recommend just specializing in one bait and learning that bait. Is you will pick up senses with the bait as you fish it. And for rats especially, you learn the feel, the haptic feedback, and how much torque it takes to actually move that bait. And then you can say, man, that feels a little heavy. Or it isn't going back, it isn't giving me the haptic feedback from the left and right movement. It's not the right frequency. It feels dulled. And then you can piece together, because you might be able to feel the bait. It may feel like it's working still, but you have grass attached to it. And being able to pick up on these before you waste your entire cast coming in, and then you can just pop it off or do something like that, I think it is probably one of the last things that I have to say. Just really pay attention, really hone in, fish a bait more than once. Remember, you don't just go out and build the world bending consciousness skills. You need confidence in it, and you need to build it up slowly. Picture as like you go out once and it's level 1. And then, after 3 outings, you're at level 2. And then after 1,000 outings, you've leveled this bait up in your consciousness. And if it's something that always works for you, it's something that always works for you. And then once you do that, maybe switch to a new bait, build your confidence back up, and you're going to learn something from a different bait. And then you can apply it to this, or see if it applies to this. Maybe the tail was getting caught up too much, and maybe changing out something, or you lost a fish this way and I need to change that. What I don't recommend is doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. If you know that people are talking about a great bite on this, number one, they're probably lying to you. Fishermen don't really share their shit too much, and they just want to, they want to mislead you on. Don't listen to them about a specific body of water. Go out and try your own stuff. And I see this happen all the time. Just a viral video comes out, and then, I think this may have happened with some of the older swim baits. They just went viral. Everybody had them, and every single pond, they fished them so much in those ponds, and they've caught fish on them because they did. Every bait works. I don't know if you guys have seen the cycle, but they work for a little bit, and then they cut off. Once you hook them and the fish receives the genetic from getting caught from that bait, that sound, and that vibration, they then pass that on to their kids, and the bait just stops working. In a few generations, it'll die off if there isn't a collective consciousness of bass out there somewhere, which there very well could be. There's a lot of cool studies on teaching mice and stuff to climb ladders, and then that species of mice all around the world learns how to climb ladders. And poison companies are in constant battle with creating new poisons for rats and mice, because once they use a poison, and this has been completely localized, once they use a poison in like Russia, the brown rat in America becomes immune to that poison too, without ever having to interact with it. So there's lots of cool things going on in this world. I know a lot of them sound weird, but crack down, do some research on it. If you don't believe me, there is a lot of weird things going on. Confidence matters. Confidence is built. It doesn't come in the bait. Okay? Again, one rod, invest all your shit into it. Get the best braid you can, get the best mono that you can, don't use fluorocarbon, don't use straight braid. If you need, like I said, if you don't want to tie an FG knot or an Alberto, just use mono. Okay, there's nothing wrong with mono. Make sure you're spooling it on opposite though. This, if it's coming off of the line, do opposites. Okay, unfold that memory onto your rod. Also, if you're using mono, cut 13 feet off of it every single day. This is why I like big game, because I don't mind cutting 15 feet off my rod. I do double my rod length because I fish through some trash. I'm over bulrush all the time, and that stuff creates micro scrapes. And the reason for the FG, again, it's not because it's just the best knot. That's part of it, but it is the best knot that you can possibly tie, besides like a PR, which you need a bobbin for, and it's just basically a big FG anyways. It's a tension knot, it's a wrap knot. um it's when I have the fish hooked, I don't want to go, dang, maybe I shouldn't have been tying this. Is my uni to uni strong enough to keep this on? Man, I haven't retied this leader in 7 days. It's probably going to break. Oh, there was a bad backlash and I stretched my line out pretty bad and I never retied. All of those things will alter the pie chart of possibilities. And on that pie chart, what I never want popping up is my leader strong enough? I don't want that popping up at all, so I just tie the best leader. So it works back in with confidence. You need to be confident in what you're doing, and there's no harm in learning how to tie the best knot. This is the most I get the most feedback and pushback on this, but I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to stop on this argument. I do think that you should be, if you're taking all this time to invest in it. You got the $300 swim bait that you just bought. You got the $300 reel, the $400 rod. You've waken up at 3. You've done everything. Why waste the knot? Why don't you want to do the best knot? Huh? Is there a reason why people are so defensive about this subject? Why don't you want to do the best? Okay? And the amount of people that say, "Oh, I can't tie it on the water. It takes too long." Like, I have heard every single possible excuse that you can imagine, okay? And none of them are valid. Not a single one of them are valid. Tie it before you go. You can use an FG all week. I'm not a proponent of that. But you can cast an FG without degradation for a week, and you can just keep shortening up your line. You actually don't need that much leader line to be effective. I don't know how effective the stretch is. I don't know, but I do know that I don't want my front hook getting caught, and I do know that I do want a little bit of stretch when that fish initially hooks up, just to soften the blow so my hooks don't tear its mouth. Other than that, you only need about a foot. I'd say about a foot. Just to stop the front treble hook from going in. That's good enough for me. But tying all these other knots, when you have the uni to uni, you're tying 2 knots and they come together, right? This is the braid and this is your leader material. Every single time this leader material goes through your guides, it's not only ruining your guides, it's degrading that knot. Okay? That's why they break so much. No one ever, after 100 casts, that knot has seen a lot of action, both going out at very high mile per hour and then reeling in slowly, sometimes even getting caught in that front, depending on the uni knot. The FG is so small. Not only because of that, like, one of the benefits of using straight braid or mono is that it doesn't ruin your guides. Braid to leader will ruin your guides. And I just seen that Caesar from Toxic Baits put out a rod specifically for braid to leader. I couldn't have been more enthusiastic and happy about this. The man knows what's up. It's the only downfall to using braid to leader if you use an FG. I'm not trying to say that other knots, they're strong, but they're not 100%. The FG knot will actually never break if you're proportionally doing it. 65-pound braid is a no knot strength, right? You test it by wrapping it around something and then wrapping it around something else, and they don't cross, and then you pull it. As soon as you tie a knot in 65-pound braid, congratulations, you have 30-pound braid. And it's like 30 to 32-pound braid in a lot of the situations. The thinner the diameter, the actual less you get out of it. Like 30-pound braid, sometimes with the wrong knots, they'll break at 8 pounds. 8 pounds. 8 to like 15 is the range that they're going to break in. Braid cuts itself. Braid cuts itself before it hits its full potential, okay? It always cuts itself. So I would guess that the higher pound, and I've also looked in and done my own tests, the higher pound doesn't do it as much. Okay, you're going to get a little bit more, but if you're fishing straight braid and it's already, it's not 65 pounds, you're already at 30, you got a 400 size reel, just put on 25-pound mono. There's not going to be much of a difference. Cut it off, cut 13 feet off, cut whatever, 2 rod lengths off your rod a day, respool often. If you're going out every day, respool often. Use these tips. Dude, I promise, you start following what I'm saying, I promise you will catch more fish. And not a lot of this has anything to do with spending money. These are all just things that you can do to prepare yourself for catching more fish. Take it in, change the mindset, head out, give it your best. Okay, that's all I ask. That's all I can ask. Thank you for watching. I know it's been a nice rant, and I'm a ranty person. I can talk about braid to leader for 3 hours if you want, but again, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, hopefully we can catch more fish.